As I said, my name is Jamie. I'm the director of a program within Microsoft called Connected Communities. There's a lot of different types of communities in existence and within the company. You see, this is just kind of a sampling of big categories of communities. But within our program, we're very specifically focused on communities of practice. So that's really communities that are about growing your knowledge and deepening your expertise and knowledge in an area. Now, even within that bucket of communities of practice, the Connected Communities program is focused in around a specific remit around breaking down barriers within the organization. We currently have about 80 communities in our program, serving about 60,000 Microsoft employees across those communities. And all of our communities, the ones that we support, are across org, they're across role, they're across geo. It's about bringing people together and being able to exchange knowledge across the company. We're focused very heavily on developing leaders, and I'll talk a little bit about how we do that on the next slide. So leadership development communities, I believe, go hand in hand. As communities of practice, helping people grow in their knowledge and their influence and just their perspective about the company is a big area for us. And then we're also Microsoft's first best customer. So we use all Microsoft products, shockingly enough on that one, but as a program of 60,000 people and some group that does come talk to customers like this type of organization, we have an ability to influence our products. And so as often as we can, we get on early pilots, we're in on envisioning sessions, we're really kind of pushing the envelope forward to make sure that things work as well as possible for the customers and as well as possible for us, because we have a lot of needs here as well. Now, this all works because of a small volunteer army of about 1,300 people across Microsoft that operate as community leadership teams. And this is really talk about leadership development in here. These are volunteers who have stepped up and said, yeah, I'm going to be here to support my peers. And when you're thinking about breaking down silos around the company, it's really important to have a lead team that represents different parts of the company. So we craft very carefully our leadership teams at that leads level to make sure we're bringing in different voices, because within your communities, you'll find they tend to focus on what the lead cares about the most. You want to have a good group of people in there that are representing different geos and different orgs and different voices, and then a support team around them, so people to help them run the community and their SMEs. So that gives just a little bit of very high level context around our program, so that as we kind of dive into how we do communications at a program level, you can understand what we're talking about. So we're customer, communities of practice. We're focused around our customer priority areas. We're focused around building knowledge. So we are the biggest kind of managed community program within Microsoft at about 60,000 members with a lot of volunteers helping us out. So to kind of dive into those details about how we do communications at a program level, I'm going to hand it over to Pete.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jamie, and thanks everybody. It's really nice to be here. As I said, I'm from Australia, and I've been in the States about 5.5 years, and I rarely get calls where there's so many people from Australia and New Zealand on, and so I'm really looking forward to hopefully not having to repeat myself as much, or if I say anything confusing, it might not be as confusing to you all. So I'm actually really excited about that, and I just wanted to start by saying thanks everybody for being here. So as Jamie said, we are, with our 60,000 members, we have that represents about 78 communities, and we're actually based in Viva Engage. And so when you think about the Viva Engage ecosystem, if you think about the Connected Communities place within that, you can kind of think about it like a pyramid. And so at the bottom there on this slide, we have an all company community where there's hundreds of thousands of people in that particular community. Everyone that joins Microsoft gets added into that space. We then have all communities across Viva Engage. So I couldn't tell you the exact number, but there's thousands of communities in that space of all different makes and models, shall we say. And then Connected Communities, our program, we represent those 78 communities. But on top of that, we also have an all member feed. And so we have taken essentially all those members that join our communities, and it's an opt-in program for us, but we take those members and add them into an all-member feed, so another Viva Engage community, and we're able to kind of target communication and share things that would be of interest across, I guess, that level of the program. And then up the top there, kind of a singular community, so each of our 78 communities fall into that space. And so when it comes to, I guess, our program part of this community structure, The all-member feed is really important to us when it comes to communication, and that's because we're able to kind of display, featured posts. We can do announcements. We can really target things that are going to be useful across our communities. So one of when we have that volume of members and that many kind of communities where we want to potentially target program updates, there might be community highlights, we can do member spotlights, hot topics, and likewise sometimes areas of the business or organizations within Microsoft will reach out to us and they might share an upcoming event there, or a speaker series, an upcoming event, and they want help kind of communicating that out rather than having to do that at scale across, in our case, 78 communities. We are able to kind of target that all member feed and work with those people to get that communication out to folks across that space as well. So that's a really valuable element for us as we think about that program. And so this is kind of sharing some of that feedback that we've gotten, just some of the examples of things that we've done. The top one being Airlift. It's one of our conferences where people would looking for more volunteers, for people helping out with different shifts, covering and supporting like that. Again, hard to do at scale, but for something like our program, we're able to get that message out as an announcement across our feed and share that out to people. Likewise, the second one there, we use the all member feed to kind of recruit members to a study across Microsoft. Again, very hard to do at scale, really hard to get the right aliases and different things. You want to target different parts of the business. And then finally, just a partnership to get contributors enrolled in a particular program supporting all different parts of MCAPS, which is one of our organizations at Microsoft. And so we just paste those in there because it gives examples where a really important part of us as connected communities is linking into the business and tying to business strategy and staying as close as we can to the ever-changing nature of our business. And so things like this really make it a powerful tool for people to be able to not only for the field to be able to connect amongst themselves and the different groups across Microsoft, but also for key organization and leaders across the business to be able to share that messaging in different ways as well. And so one thing I wanted to call out there, as connected communities, prior to coming over to Viva Engage, which we did in about July of 2021, so it's 21 months, whatever that might be, don't quote me exactly. We emerged out of, we were email based originally. These have been around for a very long time before products like Teams, Viva Engage, etc. existed for us. And so this all emerged originally out of, they were kind of email distribution lists. And so they kind of built a following there, but then when we came over into Viva Engage, it really kind of has helped transform us. I think our membership has grown roughly 40% in that time since July of 2021. We were around about 42,000 from memory, and now we sit around that 60,000 mark. And so it's really transformed that. But one of the challenges we came where people were very, I guess, familiar with that experience of sharing newsletters. On the left-hand side of this particular slide, you can see that a newsletter that might go out sometimes has hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of words, depending on the newsletter. And so we've had to kind of rethink how we approach that, not only ourselves as a program, but also our communities represents different parts of the business, industry, solution areas, priority areas across the business. And so they've had to kind of rethink how they approach that. And so there's a few options that we found there. If you kind of just send you can post by email within Yammer, within Viva Engage, but it only, it kind of posts an unformatted version. It's not a very good experience for anyone that has tried that path. We actually don't recommend that to our communities, but rather we kind of think about like a teaser text, as you can see on the right there, and then you can potentially link into, a SharePoint news site. There's also a challenge here that we put out to our communities of like, can we rethink this? I know there's that it's known that you kind of have 5, well, I see different versions, but 5, 10 seconds, 12 seconds attention span of anybody when you're putting things like this out. And so we really challenge our communities and ourselves to think about how can we, break this down into bite-sized or consumable chunks, so that it's not the kind of high volume that we would have sent in the past, but rather it's kind of adapting to the new platform, but also the way that people work at the moment as well. And so if you still want an announcement or a newsletter to land in somebody's email inbox, you have that ability in Viva Engage to, as an admin in a community, to notify members by email. And so if you've got a community of 5,000 people, that'll make sure that they get that notification in their Viva Engage experience, but also they'll get that, that'll come through to their email, and that's regardless of their settings as well. So it's not something that needs to be used every day. We don't recommend that to our communities or ourselves, but certainly something that can be a really powerful way to make sure that those really important messages land and are seen by the highest number of people possible. And data from Viva Engage, which we saw, indicates that I think about a post in Viva Engage reaches its audience about 4.5 times faster than email. That's something that we found as we were going through this as well. And it's been a good experience for us from that perspective. Today we wanted to kind of share just some interesting data points, and I hope they're interesting. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but as we were thinking about what could be useful to share and reflecting on our own program and some of the things we've found since coming from that email experience to Viva Engage, one of the really valuable things we found is being able to change your message types. So for those of you not familiar, I'm sure a lot of you are, but you have those kind of 4 message types within Viva Engage: question, poll, discussion, and praise. Each of those can actually be sent as an announcement. So that experience I shared before, where you can either send it as an announcement where it gets pushed to people, and you can also notify by email. And so this chart that we see here, just out of interest, from August of last year until March of this year, we kind of looked at average number of views per type. So for announcements, typically when that is getting pushed to so many people, we do see a higher number of views there, and this is just on average. It can depend on community size, time it was sent, a few different things, but on average that's kind of over 250 people seeing that thread. And then from praise through to question, all that's kind of organically. Interestingly, we see that when things are in the praise type, it actually gets a lot of views. So it doesn't have to be pushed to anybody, but just people are more inclined when they see that praise to kind of engage with it, at least read it, if not interact with it as well. And we'll see that more on the next slide. But questions themselves, interestingly, and this was quite interesting for us to reflect on, questions themselves get the lowest number of views. But one caveat there is when you do a question as an announcement, it really increases your chances of getting those views as well as getting those responses. And so another view that we look into is kind of response rate. And so when we take those message types and bring them over here, you can see that on the right-hand side, when you look at the purple bar, that's looking at threads with responses. So the original thread was posted and then someone has clicked reply and written something. And then the, I guess, teal color is someone has either replied and or reacted. So liked, responded, so like, thank, celebrate. I can't remember all the reactions, but those kind of reactions without necessarily replying. So you can see for announcements and praise, almost 100% get some type of reaction, but they get a lower amount when it comes to actually getting that hard response. Questions sit at about 80%. So of our questions that are asked across our community, about 80% of them get some type of response over those past 8 months. Some of our communities approach this in different ways. We'd love that to be 100%. That's obviously our dream. But some of our communities might do a weekly community call, and they'll take those threads that haven't been answered and they'll kind of make sure they're addressed on the call. So there's different ways of that. I don't know that we'll ever get to properly 100% there. But we still encourage our communities, where you are asking a question or trying to find that information, we definitely encourage that format of question. But then likewise, you can see for announcements and praise and different things, if you're looking for reactions and things to share, you can get that from those other types as well. So, but it's been a really powerful option for us to have across our communities, where you can differentiate what you're actually looking to achieve by that thread type. And then this is where, and I think I can click on here, let me see, there it is. Questions that are posted as an announcement do get that 4 times the typical, do get 4 times the amount of comments of a typical announcements for questions that are posted as an announcement. So just an interesting thing to be aware of as you're exploring the different message types. One more thing we wanted to check in on here was like Outlook integration. As I said, we previously were on email, and coming into this space, one of the reasons was it actually helped us to meet people where they are. So this is showing data where how people are active usage, if you will, and we look at active usage by people that have read, posted or reacted something within our communities. We've actually removed announcement data from this. So this is showing organic active usage without being pushed or that email kind of notification that we spoke about. And so you can see web is still the dominant way that people interact with our communities and Viva Engage for us. But email, we have about between 7,000 and 8,000, again, this is just averages, active users who are subscribing by email to a community thread, and that gives you that experience where you can, if somebody posts in a community, you'll get that message in your email. You can react to it from within there. You can reply from within there. We have about 8,000 of our members each month that are kind of interacting that way. We've also seen with Teams, and this is only showing an average over 8 months, but we've seen a lot of growth in that over the last 6 months in particular. And I expect if we were to meet 6 months from now, Viva Engage within Teams would probably be the second most dominant way where people prefer to interact. And then we've got mobile and SharePoint there just out of interest. But the point of this graph is that one of the big advantages that we have seen since coming to Viva Engage internally for our communities has been around that ability to give people those options on how they want to engage with communities themselves, and then they can interact with them from there. And so then the one more thing I wanted to touch on, I know we have a lot of comms people here. We also use this ability to dig into actual thread metrics. So out of box, Viva Engage has some really good insights, and I gave that example of where different orgs come to us and they want to kind of share something across our membership. Often they'll want to see some insights around, like, what was the total reach, how many responses did it get, what type, how many reactions did it get, and they can kind of take that back to their business and get those kind of insights just out of box. And so that kind of conversation level stuff can be powerful, in particular for those people that are looking to target certain groups or get messaging out to areas and want to make sure that it's been seen by different people. And then the next evolution for that from us, and this is kind of my final slide today, and we've dug a lot into the data piece, but is around kind of audience targeting. And so for us, we actually use a third-party product called tyGraph. And with that, we have a custom Power BI dashboard, that we tie into our people data. And so from there, we're able to really target across our 60,000 members. We can see by country activity, we can see professions. So like if we want to target particular professions, org levels. So if there's certain orgs, we want to understand what's membership like from those org levels, what's been engagement like around that. And then on the right-hand side there, we can see that at a program level, but the example we've got here is that all this can be done at a community level too, so that our leads, SMEs and engagement leads are able to see, that membership growth over time in particular. Out of box, Viva Engage has a lot of great insights, but ours have found this really useful to be able to see that 6, 12, 18-month view, to be able to see membership growth, active users, posters, reactors, and how all that has kind of changed over time as we've pushed out different things in the business and different things. And so all of this is kind of that next level that we're able to see as a program, which is really powerful for us as we're having those conversations with the business around impact and those types of things as well. I think I've got a little bit over my time, but I'll pause there. Do we want to do questions now, or I'll pass on to Chris now and we'll do questions at the end?
I think I might just move on to Chris, because the thing with questions, they might just move over time. So if there are any questions for this particular section, team, feel free to pop it in the chat. We can address that towards the end. But for now, I'll just move it on to Chris' section. Let me just take control. I will be navigating for Chris because her internet is not great, so you're going to be here the next slide a little bit. We do know how to use PowerPoint Live, guys.
Yes. Thank you for doing that. No, I don't know if there's an Xfinity equivalent in Australia, but I'm having a really difficult time with my provider lately. So if I freeze, I'm here still. I'm frozen and I'll be right back. So really excited to be here. Thank you everyone for joining me. So as mentioned at the beginning, I am an actual community lead. I am not part of the Connected Communities, but I do have a community for customer success that I lead, and it is a formal community and an official community, but it's not one of the industries or solution areas or such that's run out of Connected Communities. So the first thing I wanted to really talk about today on the next slide is just sort of the state of where we are. And for those of you who haven't used the new Bing Creator to create sort of interesting graphics and things that you like, I would absolutely highly recommend it. I went in and I said, give me a colorful teacup overflowing with information. And within 5 seconds, I got a bunch of cool images back. So if you're not using Bing Creator, you should. It's really cool. But really, it's that same old analogy of the overflowing teacup. Everybody has information coming at them. And so it's just really, really a challenging time to get mind share from people. So as a community lead for a community of around 2,000 people that's global, it's also a challenge for me because they're getting hit all different ways and all different challenges. So I just want to walk you through some of my best practices and the things that I'm doing. So if you think about the way I approach it, I always try to do things in threes or do things that are memorable. And so I have the 3 C's for what I call the hashtag BestCommunityEver. And if you ask Michelle or any of the other people in my community, they will say that that's just what we call ourselves now. So it's taken time for that to take hold, but that's the way we think about it. So when I think about my communications channels and where I hit people, we have a very robust SharePoint online, and that is where we share information about the roles, the strategies, programs, all of those different things for people to go and access. So that's sort of our library for the community. So that's where we store everything. Then if you think about how we use connections in Teams for community calls, one of the best practices that I've done for the last couple of years is I have actually put my community in charge of the community calls. So they are community led. So I've had them led by different geographies or areas like India or Japan, different subsidiaries. So it really feeds that need of peer-to-peer learning. I feel like if the purpose of the call or the community interaction is just to push content, then that can be done in a video. If it's to have interaction, then that's why I have a call. So that's when we use Teams. We use the functionality in Teams. We have the communities lead it. Next month, we're doing one, or I guess later this month, on June being Wellness Month and sharing our best practices, what we're doing around wellness. And then all of that is information that our team will be able to then take out and leverage with the customers. So that's how we use Teams. And then on Viva Engage, that's where community happens for me. That's where we crowdsource, we celebrate, the questions are asked and answered. And I'll walk through a little bit more detail on sort of the what tool when, but we even, I guess I would say I'm really fortunate that I have some really smart people on my community. And so we just created a library that is searchable. We've got over 1,000 best practices in this searchable library, and it pings people and says, you put together a best practice, let's publish it in Viva Engage. Boom. It's there, it's in the library, it's searchable. So we've got some really cool things that we're able to do in our Viva Engage community. So if we dig in a little bit on the next slide, you'll see that it can be a challenge on sort of the what tool when. So if we move to the next slide, you'll see that we can talk through sort of the what. And this is a busier slide, and there's a lot of slides on this information. But the way I think about it is Teams is where I work with the people that I know, and it's where I work in smaller groups where we need to collaborate and we need to talk to each other, and we're sharing back and forth and we're iterating on documents and we're working on a project. Maybe it's time bound, maybe it's not, but we're a smaller group. When I look about email, when I use email for communicating, it's either something that needs to be cascaded, or it's confidential and it needs to be DRM'd, as we call it, or we need to add a bunch of people. So I sort of call those sort of the political things where you have to add and make sure the right people are on there. And so that's when I use email. I do not send newsletters. I do not send, I would probably say I do one email push a month, maybe on something important that came to me, an email to the community, if that. So email is not my communication vehicle of choice at all. And then, of course, our Viva Engaged community. So the beauty of our Viva Engaged community is I have a community of 2,000, but I have almost 4,000 people in my community because I have content contributors, subject matter experts, people from around the company who engage with my community, no pun intended. And so I'm able to leverage those folks as well. So as you can see on the next slide, it's really pretty simple. It's like, which tool when, okay? I want to talk to the people that I know. I do that in Teams with a chat or part of a channel, etc. I want to talk to people I don't know or find out things from people I don't know. Then that's when I reach out to those folks using Viva Engage. And I use Viva Engage in general in the company to search for things. So it doesn't have to necessarily be my community, but part of my job is to help people find the answers. And so I use the broader Viva Engage of Microsoft just to use the search functionality, because a lot of times those conversations have already happened. I can just grab the link, share it with someone and say, hey, check this out. So moving forward, it's also sort of the size of conversation. So that's another way to think of it. If it's just a few people, if it's medium, or if it's a larger group. So if you're having trouble, like what to use when, this is sort of the guides that I use. And I find that I'm sharing this a lot with the people who are maybe really used to using email, or not familiar with Viva Engage or how to post. I find that I do a lot of education around that. So speaking of the things that I do, if we take a look at the next slide, this really kind of walks through how I spend my time as a comms and community leader. So connection, connection, connection. I tell people all of the time, if they have a question, someone else in the community probably does as well, please post it in our Viva Engage. I will tag the people, I will get you an answer. So I really think of my job is I really have to know nothing. I just have to know who does. So that makes my job a little bit easier. Sharing only relevant content. So I also see myself very much as a gatekeeper. I don't know if your community is the same as mine, but I have a lot of people who want to talk to my community, a lot of people who have knew this and knew that. And I hear a lot that back to that overflowing teacup, I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the space. I don't have the mind share. So I see myself as a bit of a gatekeeper. What's our strategy? What have we asked people to go do? And does this content then align to that information? Encourage sharing and crowdsourcing. Again, I always am pushing people to Viva Engage. Empowering content providers. So I'll talk about that a little bit on the next one, but sort of to Peter's point around the newsletter, I'm going to dive into that a little bit more. Feeling of belonging. This one is a really important one for me because I am all about the people, and I see my job as an enabler of people coming together. I'm simply there to facilitate them coming together to learn from each other. And so I need to make a space where they feel comfortable doing that. So I will put myself out there. I will do embarrassing things. I will ask embarrassing questions. It's just a way to make people feel safe, people feel really disconnected right now. We're not able to come together in many instances with our peers like we used to. We're not doing some of the big conferences and things that we used to. So people are feeling isolated. So I want to give them a forum where they feel like they belong and they can reach out and they have some type of connection with the folks that they work with. Brand identity, I will talk about that a little bit more, but that's really my big thing with like the best community ever. And then also my own brand. So I'll talk to you about that a little bit. And then showcase the superpowers. So I'm all about celebrating and showcasing the power of my community, just really making sure that people feel valued and that their work is recognized. I hear a lot from people, why would I go to Viva Engage if my manager's not there? So what's important to people is that recognition. And so really working with your key stakeholders and your leadership team to make sure that they have a presence so that people are feeling that value and that recognition. So a quick list of sort of my top tips or best practices. So the first one around my advice is no surprises. So we have a policy, or I have a policy within my team of managers know first. So I want to make sure that nothing goes out to the broader community is a shock or surprise to the managers. That's been an important one. You know, don't break yourself into jail on those. So make sure that the right people know before things go broadly. The second one is when to use announcements. So sort of to Peter's point, I got schooled early on in my community leadership that, Chris, if everything is an announcement, nothing is an announcement. And so I learned really quickly when and where to use and leverage announcements. The next one, build and foster champions. So this is a really important one. I use a field advisory board. I also try to find people who are passionate about the certain product and being a representative and a leader in the community. And I bring those people as close as possible because I can't touch or reach as much as they can locally. So building that community of champions to help you out and spread the news is super important. Next up, gatekeep. I talk about that. Gatekeeping in question. Why? Are you sure this is the right audience? Does this align to our strategy? So really being protective, I guess, of what communications are going and not just pushing things through. Next up, over communicate what tool when. So as I mentioned, I spend a lot of time talking to people about where to post, how they should post, which tool to use. Most of the time it ends up being our Viva Engage community. Next one. Predictable content and cadence. So this one I think is important just to get bandwidth from people is they know what to expect. Things sort of feel the same. They sort of look the same. They're used to the format. Everyone learns a little differently, absorb things differently. So Viva Engage does come into your Teams. It does come into your email. But having that same consistency in format, people start to know what to expect and when. Next up. Be interested, not interesting. So this one I like because I feel like in this social media crazed world that we're in, everybody's posting and sharing and they're trying to be interesting. And what I would challenge anyone who's leading communications or leading a community is to try to be interested. So if you're posting something, end it with a question. Or respond to someone's post with a question. So how can you demonstrate that you care, that you are interested in what they have to say versus it being about you and what you're trying to communicate? So that's my pointer there. Leverage leadership sparingly. So I like this one because I think if my leadership posts every single day, then it just becomes an every single day thing. So I try to do things like Monday moments where I ask a member of the leadership team to share something in the community. I stole that one from Jamie. Different things like that where I use leadership sparingly. And then I mentioned the advisory board. And then next up on the next slide, we'll dive into it a bit more. So this is my news digest. So Peter talked a little bit about newsletters in email versus Viva Engage. So this is what mine looks like. So every Tuesday, NewsDay Tuesday, I post a news digest that is a summary of the most important things from the prior week. And I break them out into need to knows, skilling, or something of that nature that's related to an individual's career. And then I have Crowdsource Corner, which is where I share all the questions that have gone unanswered, because I can go into Viva Engage and I can search for questions that have not been answered, and then I can put them in here and push those to my community. So every Tuesday, I post my news digest. People expect it. They know it's coming. I'm able to create it easily and put it into Viva Engage. So just really a great tool that gives me predictability, consistency, and it gives everybody that one place to look. And I do store these on my SharePoint site, so if people want to go back and look, but it's easy for them to search by the hashtag mwcsunews that I use for all of my newsletters. And I also encourage anyone who wants to share with my community, rather than pushing an email or pushing something in Teams, I empower them to go to my Viva Engage community, post, use the hashtag MWCSUnews, and then I will pick that up and put it in my announcement in my news digest. So it gives them this freedom to post when their information is new and relevant versus waiting for a certain day or waiting for a newsletter to be finished. My experience with newsletters is that by the time you get all the content in there, the original content is probably out of date. So it just becomes sort of this vicious cycle. So this is what I'm doing there. So if you take a look at the next slide, it is in place, not for me to go through in detail, but for you to have as a takeaway. These are sort of the steps and the things I think about when I think about building my news digest and using Viva Engage. So things like creating it in Loop makes it super easy for me just to cut it and paste it to let other people contribute if I have someone helping me out. Monitoring the unanswered questions, grabbing those, putting them in Crowdsource Corner, providing guidance to the people who are posting. Hey, what are you going to post? Let's take a look at it. Make sure it contains this. Does it have actions? Are you identifying the audience, etc.? So it's a bit of training people and a bit of just making sure that the coordination of the messages lands with people in a way that they're comfortable consuming them. So this is kind of a leave behind for you. And on the next slide, this is what I'm talking about with brands. So I am a shameless promoter of myself as the community lead. Really hard at first, getting better at it, but I use storylines. So every week on Storyline, I get on there with, hi everyone, Chris Malin here, your Modern Work community lead for you, the best community ever. This week we have some exciting things coming for you. Please make sure to pay attention. So I do that sort of silliness. I do contests. I do pictures of things that happened over the weekend. Anything to promote my VP and what he's doing on LinkedIn, I push it there. So I really use it as sort of a sounding board to elevate the information that I want to get out to my community and to have a little fun. Think of it like your feed in your Instagram, where it's just short little videos. Really easy to do, kind of fun to do, kind of embarrassing, but you kind of get the hang of it. And it's really a good way to promote who you are so that your community feels safe coming to you. They can't possibly embarrass themselves any more than you have. So it's a great way to bring them in. And then on the next slide, just as an example, we did a contest where we had everyone vote on their favorite GIF that they love to use during their daily work. And then I and some of my colleagues reenacted the GIF. That is me dressed like a cat, launching a cake at my coworker's refrigerator. So that's just an example of some of the fun ways that you can engage your community. and have a little bit of fun. I mean, honestly, things can be so all the time, and just make sure that you're getting the information out, but don't be afraid to have fun. In fact, I even have my VP signed up. We're on our 3rd GIF contest. He's going to do the GIF where Homer Simpson backs into the shrubs. So he's going to reenact that one. So again, my friend is still picking up sprinkles from under his refrigerator, but just really, really fun to do, and just a great way to engage with people and have a little bit of fun. So with that, I will turn it back over to Michelle and Tracy for comments and questions.
Thank you, Chris.
You betcha.
Thank you, the team, Jamie, Peter, and Chris. Thank you for joining today and share with us some of the insights and your day-to-day, and I guess the framework that you use to trying to engage us within the community. I guess it's kind of leading up to question time.